All right, everybody, let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's very special presentation. Thanks for joining us for Expedition Live, where we will be chatting in just a moment with the museum's paleontology team who are out in the field right now looking for dinosaurs, digging them up, bringing them out of the ground, and then eventually getting them here to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Every summer, our team goes out west looking for dinosaurs, and we get the amazing opportunity to actually call them from sites all over the West and then have them give us, updates, talk to us about what it's like to be a paleontologist out in the field for one, and what cool and interesting things they are finding, what discoveries they are making. My name is Chris, and I work here at the Museum of Natural Sciences as an educator. And as always, it's good to be with you for these programs. But you're not here to meet me. You're here to meet the fantastic team of paleontologists that work for the museum. So without ado at all, everybody, I want you to meet Dr. Lindsay Zano. Dr. Zano is the head of paleontology here at the Museum of Natural Sciences and an associate research faculty at North Carolina State University, and joins us from somewhere in the middle of New Mexico. Hey, Lindsay.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
It's going great here. How are things where you are?
Things are going really well. Yeah, we're having a pretty successful start to a very long field season. We're out in the San Juan Basin in northwestern New Mexico right now. We've got a 3-week stint here collecting a few dinosaur skeletons, and everything's going really great.
That sounds awesome. Viewers, I'll remind you that for today's program, it's interactive. So jump in the chat on YouTube or jump into the comments if you're watching on Facebook, wherever you happen to be. If you've got questions about paleontology, looking for dinosaurs, working in the field, drop them in, type them up, let me know. I'm going to be looking to all of you watching for questions for today's program. So while we wait for the questions to roll in, Lindsay, give us sort of a sense of where you are and why you're there.
Well, I decided to call in from one of our dinosaur quarries. This is Emmy Bender behind me. She's a graduate student at NC State, and she's working on uncovering a lot of bones that are just coming out of this layer of this hill behind me. And we don't know exactly which species this is yet. It looks similar to something we call an ornithopod, which is kind of a relative of a duck-billed dinosaur. But as so often happens in the fields, our job out here is not to uncover all the bones so we can see everything. It's just to get around them safely and package them in plaster so we can get them to the museum. So when that happens, we often don't really get to see very much about what we're collecting until it gets back to the lab. So we're not sure exactly what species we're working on yet.
Oh, exciting stuff. You said you've been out there for 2 or 3 weeks now. How's the field season going? Are you finding a lot of great stuff?
Yeah, it's good. So we came out and did a lot of prospecting last year and then came back with some permits to start excavations. That's how the process works. We have to prospect around looking for sites that seem like they might be good to open quarries. And then we put permits in, we wait a whole year, we come back and we start removing all the rock on top of those layers and digging in to see just how much bone might be at the site. So we come back with a handful of sites that we know we want to work on, and we really have no idea when we get here, if there'll be an entire skeleton in the hill or there'll just be 1 or 2 bones. And so far it's been hit or miss. Emmy and I were working a Tyrannosaur site that I was really excited about yesterday. Just ended up having really a few more scrappy things in it and nothing else. The rest of the crew right now is over at Ceratopsy in our horn dinosaur quarry. That is ending up being much better than we thought it would be. And that we thought we were going to close it down for the year. And then as they were getting into the back, they found 4 or 5 more bones going into the back wall. So that's part of what I love about being out here is you never really know how good and what exactly you're going to discover at each different site. It's different.
Well, I'm sorry that your Tyrannosaur site didn't work out.
That's okay. We have a lot of them. One of them's got to work out. There's two more out there, a couple miles behind me that we need to check out before we leave too. So lots of Tyrannosaur feet out here, and not a lot of other bits so far.
Just feet. I'm always surprised at one, how you manage to find dinosaur fossils when you're prospecting, like just the tiniest bits of bones sticking out of hills as you're hiking around. Like, you're not on hiking trails looking for things, am I right?
No, we're not on hiking trails. This is pretty rough terrain, actually. You can't tell from this little hill behind me, but it's pretty steep around here. And yeah, it just takes time. You have to train your eye to pick out, the ground is littered. You can kind of tell behind me, it's just littered with chips of rock, and you have to be able to pick out, a 1 inch or 1 centimeter bit of bone sometimes across that landscape. So it just takes time to know what you're looking for. And each place is different. The bone is a different color, preserved differently in every place you go.
How do you know to go looking there, like where you're at now, to try to find these?
Well, when we're looking for places to go, we sort of have a question in mind. Paleontologists, I think, often they're portrayed as people who just want to go out and find dinosaurs, but we're scientists, right? So we have a question that's driving the data that we're trying to collect out here. And so for us, we were looking for rocks that preserve dinosaur ecosystems of a certain age. And so we'll go to geologic maps and satellites and look for places where rocks of that age are exposed in badlands on the surface. And we're also looking for particular kinds of environments, because some ancient environments preserve fossils better than other ancient environments. So in this case, this is sort of a coastal plain with meandering rivers, a place where bones can get buried by sediment back in the Cretaceous. And so now they're exposed at the surface, and we can hunt around and find stuff.
So New Mexico looked a lot different 67 million years ago, I guess.
It looks a lot different in the 5 years that I've been out here, I'm going to say. We've had a lot of climate change out here in the San Juan Basin. And this whole valley where we used to camp used to be covered in green and covered in black widow spiders living in the green. And now it's it's a dune field. It's dry as a bone. It doesn't seem to rain here anymore the past few years. And so that's making the work out here much harder, because we're having sort of daily sandstorms, sometimes gusts up to 40, 50 miles an hour. So it's really becoming a very, very extreme environment in Northwest New Mexico because of climate change. But yes, back in the Cretaceous, it was completely different. This would have been a heavily forested, lush, wet environment with rivers and a lot of wildlife, a lot of plant life, a lot of dinosaurs.
A lot of dinosaurs. So a question for you from the chat that's come in, our first one. Tell us about the team. Is everyone out there professional, or do you have volunteers with you as well?
We don't have any volunteers right now. We have a core crew of 7 people. They consist of myself and another staff member from the museum, Eric Lund, who's going to be running the new lab downstairs for the Dueling Dinosaurs project. He's out here. And then we have a postdoc who's here from Mongolia doing work for the museum, and grad students. Just one new person, one new grad student who's starting with us at NC State next year. So a pretty experienced team right now, and pretty small, so it's nice.
Excellent. Yeah, this is a great view of, I'm guessing your grad student back there's working on some kind of dinosaur fossil. Do you know what she's got, what she's working on?
Yeah, she's got a mess of things. So this Emmy Bender is Dr. Gates at NC State's master's student. She's doing her master's degree on duckbill dinosaurs, describing the anatomy of some duckbill dinosaurs. And in her little area, she's got 8 or 9 bones all jumbled together like pickup sticks, ribs that are crisscrossing, and a big scapula, and some bones from the spine and other things. And so she's kind of doing a puzzle. She's got to figure out how to take each one of these bones off the other bone without damaging it in small jackets, because if we take some really big jacket, we have to carry it a couple miles out of these badlands, which is, we do that all the time. But if we don't have to, it's better to take small jackets. And if it gets really big and becomes a really big mess, we might have to take a really large jacket, in which case we need a helicopter, which is something that we did yesterday. So that jacket would have to stay on the hill for a year until we came back next year if it gets too big.
Oh, wow. The next question that had come in was if you could tell us about the airlift. Somebody's been following you on Twitter, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so yesterday's a great day. I have to say the best days in the field are helicopter days. So like I said, if we have a really big animal, we had a really big duck-billed dinosaur, the leg bone is my size. And we can only carry jackets that are, 300 or 400 pounds by hand out of here. We strap those jackets on a big sort of sled, and we all get around and we carry it in teams out of the badlands. But once these jackets get really big, it's just impossible to get them down the hill safely. So we hire helicopters. We put all the jackets in a big net, package it all up, and the helicopter will come and they attach a long line, 100-foot long line to the base of the helicopter, and they fly that over. It has a clamp on the end, and we clamp the net all up into that hook, and they just carry it off and take it back down to camp, and then we'll load it into trucks at camp and drive it back to the museum. And if we're lucky, we get a ride, which we did yesterday. We got a ride up to the site in the helicopter, and that's always a lot of fun.
For our viewers, I just dropped a link to Dr. Zano's Twitter account where you can see video of the helicopter coming in, picking up a big cargo net full of fossil jackets. And then there's also a video on your feed, on Dr. Zano's feed, of the helicopter ride back to camp, which must be just like the most fun thing.
It's the best, because you're hiking, you've got this winding trail, you're hiking in and out of these really complex badlands, and it from the ground really well. But when you see it from the air, it's a completely different perspective on the place. We've spent months out here, months of our lives out here, but to see it from that bird's eye view is really spectacular. And honestly, nothing is better than watching those dino bones fly. It's just the best feeling. Just feels so amazing when they lift off and they're just carried to camp, and it just feels great because so many things can go wrong, with the winds out here. Loads sometimes have to be dropped. We've had jackets be smashed on the side of a hill or whatever. So when everything goes perfect, it's really fabulous. So we had a great day yesterday.
Congratulations on getting them back to camp safely then.
Yeah, now we just got to get them back to the museum safely. They really didn't go that far. They're right there.
Now, it occurs to me, we've been talking about fossil jackets and, digging the bones up, separating them one from another, like Emmy is working on. But what's the process, between finding them in the hillside, uncovering them, and then airlifting them?
The jacketing process?
Correct.
Yeah. So, like I said, our goal isn't to chip away all the rock and clean up the bone in the field. It's just to get around the bone so that we can package it. So we'll sort of trench around a bone, leaving as much of the rock as we can in place to protect it. And then we'll cover it in wet paper towels or wet tissue that we fit into every little crevice. And then if it's a small jacket, we use plaster soaked bandages that are the same kinds of bandages that you would get if you went to the doctor and you broke your arm, right? It's just making a small cast. But when the bones get too big, that's not strong enough. And so then we use hydrocal or basically plaster, really strong plaster, and burlap or jute bandages. So we dunk those bandages in the plaster. We mix it here on site. We carry the water and the powdered plaster here. We dunk the bandages, mix them, and then it's like paper mache in kindergarten. We just wrap the bandages all around as tightly as we can. And we let that cure and harden. And then we keep digging around underneath it until it's on a little pedestal, and we flip it over, we jacket the other side. Then we have the entire bone encased in rock, encased in plaster, in a package ready for transport by helicopter or truck or by manpower down the hill.
People power.
People power.
Yeah. So, okay, here's another one from you for the chat. And since we kind of been talking about what the job is like when you're in the field, this person writes that they're an undergrad at Montana State, attending their first dig coming up this summer. Any advice for first timers in the field?
Yeah, sure. Expect the unexpected. Nothing goes as it's supposed to out here. So just be ready for anything and be open to that. I'd also say like camp life, a lot of people come in and it's, we're running a base camp. So we get up in the morning, we make coffee, we do dishes, we get supplies ready, we deal with water. There's always something happening. And so just getting involved and being helpful is huge. Just being part of the team and like looking for ways to help out when you get there and help with camp life, because we're doing all the work all day, and then we're also doing all the work, to keep camp running and keep everybody safe and fed and gather all the supplies and everything we need. So those are my bits of advice: be helpful and be ready for anything.
Those also sound like the parts of being a paleontologist that maybe they don't quite teach in the paleo classes at college and university.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people expect you just come out to camp and you do the work and then you come back to camp and you get to sit down and relax. But that's not it's not how it goes, because we, from the second our eyes crack in the morning till the second we drop into tents at night, we're working to take care of camp and take care of the jobs that we got to get done out here. We have a short time to do everything, so we're working as hard as we can.
Excellent stuff. All right, let's see. Michael in the chat wants to know if we have any sauropod fossils in our museum, or maybe if you find any out there in New Mexico.
Yeah, so as far as we know, sauropods weren't around in this part of North America at this time. So we won't find any sauropod fossils here in the Menifee Formation. If we did, that'd be really cool, but we're certainly not expecting to find any. And yes, we do have some at the museum. We have a sauropod that we dug out of the Jurassic Morrison Formation in Utah. That's only partially prepared. It's a nice articulated 7 to 8 foot section of tail, plus some pelvic bones and other things. But we've been collecting a lot of stuff. Lisa, who's on the call, can probably say better than I, but thousands of fossils in the last few years, and most of them are still in jackets, because the longest part of the process is actually the preparation that has to happen in the lab. So we can collect a lot of stuff in our 20 weeks, but it might take 20 years to actually clean and conserve all those fossils so that they're ready for study.
And do you know what type of dinosaur that you've discovered? Right here is the next question. I think he said it was a hadrosaur. Is that right? A duckbill?
It's probably a duckbill relative. I mean, there are still
Relative.
A lot of new species out here. We one of the reasons we're out here is this ecosystem is still pretty poorly known. So there have been some dinosaurs named. There's been an armored dinosaur named, which is an ankylosaur. There's been one duckbill dinosaur named. There's been a tyrannosaur named, and one ceratopsian named. But there were a lot of dinosaurs in this ecosystem, so there's still a lot of unknown species out here, including most of the small feathered dinosaurs, the raptor dinosaurs or ornithomimid dinosaurs. There should be many different species of horned dinosaur out here, and there may be different species of duckbill dinosaur as well. So anything that we're working on out here could be new. Like I said, we can't really tell in the field so much. Sometimes we can tell, but most of the time we try and keep those bones inside the rock so that they're safe for transport back to the museum. So we need to take them back to the lab to get them all cleaned up to be sure what we've got.
Excellent stuff. Kenneth wants to know, are there ever any instances where you have to come up with new strategies or innovations on the fly for preserving delicate finds on site?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the marvelous things about excavating fossils is it's not only every site is different, every animal is different, every formation is different. It's also, as you're working, the situation is constantly changing. So you're trying to get around one bone and you think you've got a clear path, and then you hit 2 more bones, and then you have to step back and readjust. and make a new plan. And then you make that plan and maybe something about that plan fails. And so that's good for my personality. Some people that drives them crazy. They just want like a plan. But I love that it's constantly changing, that everything is completely unexpected. And every second of every day, we're innovating to try and figure out how to get this stuff collected safely without damaging it. We have our basic set of tools. We have consolidants that protect the bone and hold the pieces together while we're working. We use mud a lot. I use mud a lot to help me when things get kind of iffy, sort of stabilize things as you're working. But yeah, there's not a ton of innovation, but even figuring out how to move a big jacket once you have one is a completely new experience every time, because you have to chart a new path and things happen along the way. And so that's one of the things that I really love about being out here, is just it's unpredictable.
It also seems like just kind of a cool place to hang out for a little while. Like the landscape is just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's very peaceful out here. I can slowly give you a pan of the landscape. It's really beautiful. The Menifee is one of the most beautiful places we work. So you can see the Badlands out there. Just beautiful. It's also vicious. There's no good time of year to be out here. We right now have pretty decent weather. It's been cold at night. We've had water freezing in camp. So it's going down into the 30s, but up into the 70s during the day, which is nice. But the winds, are pretty brutal out here. And it's exhausting to just get pummeled by steady wind all day and all night. It's hard to sleep when there's like 30-mile-an-hour winds pummeling your tent all night and stuff. So the environment is gorgeous, but it can be difficult at times, and the terrain can be difficult. I like that, but it can be hard hiking too. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what's the worst thing about being out there and doing this? Because it doesn't seem like there would be that many downsides, but 30-mile-an-hour winds all night long sounds like a downside.
That's a bit of a bummer. It's not my favorite part. I don't know. I don't feel like there are any downsides of being out here. Maybe we have good community, and we all really enjoy being with each other. Of course, but people miss their families and things too. And you can be really disconnected. There are some areas, I'm calling you from a spot that has service, but most of our other quarries don't have, any service. And so and camp doesn't have any service. So you're disconnected all day from your friends and family at home. So that can be difficult. But other than that, what's not to love about being out here?
What's not to love about being a dinosaur paleontologist? Okay, let me get another question for you from the chat. Oh, let's see. It says, also, if you can, tell Josh that Kenny says hi.
Okay, I will. I'll see him tonight.
All right, let's see. Michael wants to know if you visited the Field Museum in Chicago, and if you're familiar with Dr. Fiducia's works.
I worked at the Field Museum for 3 years. And yes, I am familiar with Dr. Fiducia's research.
Excellent.
Not sure.
Yeah, where we go from. But there's another one here for you. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself through these extensive periods of hyper-focused paleontology work?
That's a cool question. Hyper-focus. I'm not sure I'm hyper-focused. I'll take the compliment. That's a fabulous question, because that's really the part about bringing new students and new people out here that I think is one of the greatest gifts we can give, because this environment, it pushes you and it allows you to find your boundaries and allows you to push your own boundaries. And that's how we grow as people, right? It's really rough. It's rough hiking. It's a rough environment. It's exhausting. We can pick and shovel for 8 to 10 hours a day. And it really breaks you down. And then you learn how strong you are and how capable you are, and build you right back up. And so I think that these kinds of rigorous experiences, especially being part of a team where you're all sort of sharing in that challenge together, is really great for learning more about yourself and becoming a more confident person. And so I think it's a great experience to come out and do this kind of work. Really hard, but that's how we grow.
Excellent. What would be your dream discovery?
Oh, I have just one. I mean, every time we're out here, we're looking for new cool things. I'm particularly fond of theropod dinosaurs. That was my thing early on, although I kind of work on everything right now. So especially the small ones. And of course, those are the hardest to find because it's harder to find small animals. They don't preserve as easily in the fossil record. They're harder to find when you're prospecting. And their skeletons are very, very lightly built. They have a lot of air pockets in them, and they're very thin. And so they don't hold up well in the fossil record. And so they're very, very rare. So like I said, we know already a fair bit about the big dinosaurs that lived here, the big duckbills, the big ceratopsians, the big tyrannosaurs, the big armored dinosaurs, but we still know basically nothing about any of the small feathered bird-like dinosaurs that are from this environment. So I found tantalizing pieces, an arm bone here, bits of leg bones there, a claw here, that kind of thing, but we haven't found enough to name or fully understand what those animals look like from this environment. So that would be wonderful to find something like that here, and we'll keep looking. Maybe it'll turn up.
Wow, yeah, interesting stuff, right? Because I think of, or at least used to think of, dinosaur paleontology as, you're out there looking for the biggest, baddest dinosaurs that you can possibly find. Like, you want to find the sauropod with the longest neck, the T-Rex with the biggest teeth, and you want to find the whole thing. But so much of your work, Lindsay, is also, you said it at the top, pulling together all of the puzzle pieces of these ecosystems.
Yeah, we're not headhunting out here. We're not looking for the biggest, the greatest, the scariest. We're trying to figure out how these ecosystems change through time, because this is a very interesting period in Earth's history where there's a lot of climate change happening, a lot of sea level rise happening, a lot of atmospheric CO2 and global warming and sea surface temperature warming, and a lot of extinction and a lot of ecosystem change. And so we're working these areas to try and piece together how those dinosaur ecosystems changed over time as a result of all those things that Earth was experiencing. And our hope is that in doing that, we can contribute to helping us deal with the challenges that we face as a society as our planet continues to change. Of course, it's changing at a much faster rate now than it did at the time period that we're looking at, but it sort of sets a baseline for understanding those changes right now that we can work with. And so we want to not just find the big dinosaurs and not just name new dinosaurs, but we're out here collecting everything we can find, the turtles, the crocs, the little bits of things, just to try and piece together a complete idea of what this ecosystem might have looked like.
I think that's fascinating stuff, to how dinosaur paleontology can inform challenges that we face today.
Yeah, we're more connected to dinosaurs than we probably think about,
Jason on Facebook wants to know if you've run across any type of new aquatic fossils.
Not a lot of aquatic stuff out here. It's actually remarkable how few microvertebrate sites we find. So these are places that tiny little fossils have been accumulated and buried, and so you'll sometimes find a layer where there's all of these tiny little teeth and bits of small animals preserved, and those are marvelous because you can collect a lot of data on the animals that lived in an ecosystem in a very small time. You get just a lot of information, but we haven't found a lot. I've only found one microvertebrate site here, and it was pretty poor. There were some croc materials in there, some fish verts, things like that. So we don't have a very good idea of the aquatic fauna from right here. If you go way east of here, you're getting much closer to the sea. So there was a big seaway that ran across the middle of North America at this time. And so as you move east from where we are, you'd get closer and closer to the shoreline. Similar to North Carolina, you'd be moving toward the beach. So you have a much better record of aquatic and marine organisms as you move east. We're here west because we actually want the terrestrial stuff, because that's where the dinosaurs are. So we're kind of more focused on the land stuff here.
Okay, excellent. Great stuff there. Okay, let's see. Have you thought about doing research on collagen fibers of fossilized animals like dinosaurs, birds, or sea reptiles someday?
Yeah, we have a grant in right now to do more of that with, of course, Mary Schweitzer's lab, who's at NC State, and a colleague of mine. That's one of the areas that her lab is very, very famous for, and we've been collaborating with her on that sort of thing. Mostly looking at reproductive tissues so far, but we're really interested in looking at feathers and skin and the preservation of soft tissues. And one of the great things is that we need fossils to do that. And so we have a good partnership where we're out here looking for the fossils that labs like Mary's lab can use to do the experiments.
Cool stuff. Let's see. Oh, Elizabeth Jones says hi.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Wants to know what's the weirdest thing that's happened so far this field season.
Oh, what's the weirdest thing that's happened? Emmy, what's the weirdest thing that's happened?
I mean, I guess you kind of don't want weird things to happen on your digs. Maybe it's a good thing that there's not something that comes to mind.
Well, we have a scorpion living in one of our jackets that we're probably taking back to the museum. Don't tell the museum. Oops. I like this.
Oh boy.
Museum, but, no, he's probably gone. But he was living in a jacket we left here last year, and he had carved himself out a little hole and was hanging out in there. No, it's been pretty boring overall, I'd say. We had a couple parties. You know, we've got some dance parties we do to like release everybody's exhaustion and tension. So we had a couple dance parties. That was fun. But yeah, otherwise we're just working our butts off out here. That's about it.
The disco lights are the stars.
We don't have a disco ball yet, but if anybody wants to donate a solar powered disco ball, I think that'd be a great addition to camp. So you can send it to Chris. He'll give it to me. He'll get it out to us.
I'll make sure it finds its way. Okay, let's see here. Okay, an interesting question for you. The Society for Vertebrate Paleontology conference in 2021, get ready, had an abstract proposing a hypothesis that Dinomoterror may be anagenetic with Lithrinax and Teratophonius. What do you think of this? Does the temporal position of the Menifee match?
Oh boy, that's a complicated question. What do I think? I think anagenesis is very hard to identify in the fossil record. So anagenesis is the idea that sort of one species is evolving directly into another species without like splitting into multiple species. And it's very, very hard to test in the fossil record. I'm not a huge fan of the concept, but I think that question might be a little complicated for this particular audience. So maybe that person can email me and I can write back to them directly. But yeah, this time period that we're in right now is the earliest Campanian. So the Campanian is one of the most iconic intervals, like geologic time periods for dinosaurs. We know a lot about the dinosaurs of the Campanian. We've moved down in time into the earliest Campanian, where we know very little, and then before that we know almost virtually nothing. And we'll later on in the field season we're sort of moving older in time. to try and fill in more of that gap that we don't know about. So we're looking for more tyrannosaurs to help understand the relationship between Lithonax and Teratophonius and potentially Dinomaterra. So it'd be nice to find more materials of Dinomaterra. That's probably what we're finding out here with our Tyrannosaur, but we haven't found any skulls yet that would help answer that question.
Oh, interesting. Really interesting. I'm just excited that I seem to have pronounced all those words correctly.
You did a pretty good job, Chris. I'm impressed.
I've never seen these words before in my life. Okay. Next question for you. There's some more questions about like collagen and stuff like that, but I think folks probably need to just dig into Mary Schweitzer's work for some of that, perhaps. We've got some, some real paleo people on.
This isn't the best environment for collagen preservation as far as we can tell, but we are testing, you know, what kinds of environments preserve soft tissues better. And so for that, we have to have dinosaur bones collected from a lot of different preservational environments. So sometimes the bones we find here are in sort of these iron concretions. That's potentially turning out to be a pretty good preservation tactic. So yeah, one of the things that we're doing as we move throughout the summer to all these different locations is collecting bones from all these different environments and of all different preservation qualities to try and figure out what's the best situation for the preservation of soft tissues like collagen.
Excellent. And Kenneth is asking if you had a sort of aha moment or a spotlight experience that solidified your passion for paleontology. And, you know, maybe here in the last few minutes, you could give us an idea of how you really got into this kind of work.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess I did have an aha moment when I was just going between high school and early college. My mom gave me a book called From Lucy to Language. It was about human evolution and paleoanthropology, and I had never read anything. I'd had no experience with that in my life to that point, and it really blew my mind. And I was just incredibly fascinated with the idea of evolution and leading to human animals and all of this sort of thing. And so I changed my major. I was a pre-med major, and I switched to paleoanthropology, packed up my car and drove to New Mexico, which is where I am now. And that's where I started my paleo career at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. And I was working on human evolution, which was really fascinating. But while I was out here, the guys at the museum were working on dinosaurs. And so I started sort of tagging along with them and realized that the picture was so much bigger than I had even given it credit for at that time, and became fascinated with things that were even more ancient than people. And so that's how I kind of got into it. It's just, I kind of fell into it by coming out here and just starting to work on it. But there was always that moment where I realized that this is just one snapshot of the history of life that we get to see. But by doing paleontology, we get to sort of peer into the past and hopefully gain a little insight into where we're going in the future.
Exceptional. Love that. That's just amazing. And we're so fortunate to have you with us as part of the museum and at North Carolina State University too. I'm sure they appreciate you as well.
Well, these are fun, and I'm so glad we didn't have a windy day, because yesterday was rough, and I thought I was going to be like huddled under a blanket or something. So with perfect weather today, and really glad we got to talk to you guys. Glad everything's good back there.
So how much longer will you be in New Mexico?
We'll be in New Mexico until June 11th, I think. We're going to move south to the Zuni Basin, into the Merino Hill Formation, which is a very mysterious formation that's very hard to find fossils in, not like the Menifee where there's fossils everywhere, but super important because there was some extinctions that happened around that time. And so we're going to go check out, we have 2 quarries we're going to open there. We have no idea what's in there, but we're going to do a live stream from the Zuni Basin, Merino Hill in a couple weeks with you, right, Chris?
That's right. On June 3rd, we'll be checking in to see what the mysterious Zuni Basin is giving you.
Okay, well, you know, it's hard to like know what day it is out here. Everything is just the same, so I will do my best not to forget June 3rd. And we'll see you again soon, I guess.
Lindsay, thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah, great to talk to you guys. Thanks everyone who watched and for the great questions.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Folks, make sure that if you're on Twitter, you're following at Expedition Live to get as regular updates as they have cell signal to post online. Great pictures, great video of everything that's happening on this summer's expeditions. And of course, you can follow the Museum of Natural Sciences on all social media platforms. We are at Natural Sciences on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we do our best to share over as well. So if you're following Lindsay, following us, or any of the members of the NCMNS Paleo team, you'll be getting all the latest and greatest information about what's happening. We will be back here with another check-in, another update from the field with the Paleo team noon on June 3rd. So go ahead and mark your calendars to be right back here at the museum's YouTube channel and Facebook page for the latest updates. And Lindsay, take care, stay safe out there, and I hope everybody watching does the same.
Bye,
everybody.
Chris, will do.